Happy Friday and welcome into a special edition of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast with Field and Daniel.
Hey, buddy.
Second straight Friday, just you and me holding it down.
I love it.
But not only is it a different cast here on this side of the glass.
Yeah.
But so normally, obviously, you hold down the production side of the show. We've got Jackson in today.
Yeah.
A rookie run.
Yeah, I like to be able to get my rookies sometime in the preseason to see how they're going to handle the regular season. You know what I'm saying?
But you're not going to get Wally pipped, are you?
You know what? You never know. You never know. Jackson might turn out to be a superstar in the making, and I'm just going to get relegated to the third team.
So I was going to say, we can borrow your name, Daniel. Call him Daniel, like Daniel Jones. And of course, one of the notable storylines from Thursday night's game. Matthew and Stefania out today and back on Monday, I think. I don't know.
They'll be back sometime next week.
They'll be back before the regular season begins.
Hopefully.
But of course, one of the big questions is whether Cam Newton will be. We'll get to that in just a second. But just a quick reminder, Daniel, that this year we're doing a listener league.
Yep.
And submissions can be sent fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com.
That is accurate.
I don't know how frequently you're checking that inbox, but did you happen to see any after yesterday? We started to get submissions.
We have started to get a couple of submissions. We will get them looked at over the weekend. We'll have some fun. Kyle's taking off for the weekend. See you, Kyle. Thanks for this.
Thank you, Kyle. See you, buddy.
So we will get some stuff over the weekend, and then we'll figure out who we're putting in the league next week and get a date set. And then I guess I'll just win the league.
You know, it's crazy. So you will win the league. You have to get your league set now because it's draft season.
I know.
I'm in a couples league this year. Very excited about this.
Ooh.
With Chapin, who took the ownership of creating this league yesterday. And she was like, what do you think? And I was like, I think it's awesome. As long as you can get the league together and pick a date because we are here, Daniel.
It's time.
It is draft season. So along those lines, let's get to the football.
Rewind.
Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
I mean, Jackson's batting 1,000 so far.
Like already right off the bat, that's like a double right there.
All right, Jackson, you're hired. Wally pipped. That's right. Sorry, but by the way, I learned this. I know about Jackson is from Syracuse. So we got a Syracuse theme here going. I think ESPN has in the bylaws of ESPN, 52% of all employees must have graduated from Syracuse. So welcome to the team, Jackson.
Thank you very much. They told me that in the intro meeting, that I was just keeping a quota.
Oh, okay. That's what it is.
That's pretty good right there.
Not bad.
So, Daniel, usually week 3 of the preseason is the most notable week because NFL teams tend to play their starters more in the third preseason game than the other 3 games combined.
Usually.
We're seeing sort of a shifting of the winds right now with NFL teams being more mindful of injuries to star players. But there were 12 teams in action last night, 6 games. So you and I jotted down some notes, some things that we saw last night that were fantasy relevant. Unfortunately for Cam Newton, it's an injury. So what we know about Cam Newton is it's a sprained left ankle, according to David Newton, who covers them for us here at ESPN. It took place, I believe, in the second quarter last night against the Patriots. Cam Newton's a player that we have drafted. He's going in terms of ADP right now, QB6. I've got him as quarterback 5 in my ranks. Would you be nervous? You have a draft probably this weekend or at some point early next week. How nervous would you be about drafting Cam Newton now, given that we have some uncertainty with this ankle issue?
I mean, he's going to drop a little bit for me just because everything, a lot of what Cam's value comes from is his ability to be able to be mobile, get out of the pocket, be able to run, and use that skill set. And so until I hear a little bit more to figure out how serious this injury is, I think I'm just going to take, again, a lot of fantasy for me is just that risk-averse approach until you get farther down in drafts where you're like, all right, the value outweighs whatever this is going to be. So, maybe where I would have taken Cam here, maybe if a Carson Wentz is there, like maybe I'll take a Carson Wentz instead of a Cam until I find out what's exactly happening with Cam.
It's been interesting to follow players like Andrew Luck, also a quarterback, and seeing how his value has dropped in these drafts. And we've been a part of several mock drafts, and Andrew Luck just plummets. And for quarterbacks, when you're only starting one per week, and there are so many good ones this year,
that's the key.
That it's going to be like there will be a lot of people that I think will bypass on Cam Newton. You mentioned a very important part. He's an excellent runner, and even if he is capable of playing in week 1, and we have zero indication one way or the other at this time, there is the concern about the rushing ability. Like him being well enough to play and throw is different from him being full Cam Newton.
Yep.
In his career, he has averaged 601 rushing yards and 7.3 rushing touchdowns per season. He's only had 1 year with 25 plus touchdown passes. So the value in Cam Newton has long been that he is, at least has been, the best dual threat quarterback in the NFL for quite some time. So we don't want to sound the alarm too much because Ron Rivera was non-committal last night. Marty Herney, the Panthers GM, said basically we hope it's not too serious. We don't know. But if you're drafting this weekend and you were previously contemplating, listen, you're going to bypass Patrick Mahomes because you think someone will snatch him in the first 18 picks, maybe you say to yourself, all right, I kind of viewed Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz and Cam Newton in a similar light.
Yep.
You may have your decision made for you.
That's exactly where I am. I'm in a draft right now, a slow draft, and I was sort of hoping that Cam was going to fall to me a little bit. And now I'm readjusting my strategy on the fly to figure out, who is it that I'm going to take there. So
it's a really interesting conversation. I don't even know if the Panthers have stated who their second quarterback would be, but for now, I think the headline is, if you're drafting this weekend, be prepared. If you're thinking about taking Cam Newton, you can move him down your ranks ever so slightly, but it's possible that people will listen to this podcast at, 8 p.m. tonight, and we might have an update on Cam Newton. So 100%. No precipitous drop as of this time.
Understanding that hopefully we have an update sooner rather than later, but does this change anything for you as far as the pass catchers, as far as Christian McCaffrey? I mean, would they move a ton either way until we hear any news?
Christian McCaffrey, I'm totally good with. The pass catchers, I feel the same way, because even if it is a little bit of an issue for Cam, it doesn't sound, and again, this is the perils of doing this at 10:06, not even 12 hours after the game.
Yep.
But it doesn't sound like this is a major concern. The question might be week one availability, but beyond that, not too many concerns. On the other side, as in a player coming back from an injury, not a player sustaining an injury, is Darius Geis for the Redskins, who had his first game action since tearing his ACL last year. I believe it was the second preseason game. On Thursday, he had 11 carries for 44 yards, had a touchdown called back, Eric Flowers' holding penalty. Not the first time you heard of that. Daniel, there are just things in life that, you believe it when you see it, or you need to see it to believe it. Darius Geis, a lot of talent. Came in last year and ripped the preseason up until that ACL injury. Last night, to me, was like what I had hoped to confirm. We saw it last night. That was encouraging from Darius Geis. All the usual preseason caveats, but did your confidence grow markedly last night behind Darius Geis?
It did. I mean, where Darius Geis is being drafted right now, I think there are a couple of guys in that tier that it's like, I'm not really sure which way I want to go. And so to be able to see this sort of sets him apart, maybe moves him to the top of that tier for me when you get into the middle rounds of a draft and you're looking for maybe that third running back or, a potential low-end flex play. I still have a little bit of concern about Adrian Peterson and Chris Thompson and, whether or not Bryce Love gets in the mix at all sometime this year. There are players there that that the Redskins like at that position, but Darius Geis he ran hard. He looked good. It was a nice stiff arm on the, you like seeing that from a guy. Yeah. He's a physical runner, and I loved being able to see that last night. It gave me confidence going into drafts that it's like, if I have a tiebreaker situation like we often talk about, okay, I think that this gives me a little bit of that bump to make him win that tiebreaker in potential situations.
There was a time where I was a bit cautious on Darius Geis beyond the injury. Mm-hmm. It was also, hey, they gave Adrian Peterson a 2-year contract worth up to $8 million. I'm thinking to myself, you don't bring Adrian Peterson back to not utilize him. But I'm keeping my eye on Adrian Peterson over the next 2 weeks until rosters are finalized before week one of the regular season. Because my thinking is, all right, Darius Geis, at the time of the signing of Adrian Peterson, was still recovering from his ACL injury. I don't know if there was a setback, but it was not your typical ACL recovery. Adrian Peterson had done a lot for you last year, played very well, rushing for over 1,000 yards. It wasn't just a hedge. It was insurance plus a hedge plus talent. But I'm starting to wonder, maybe this Darius Geis thing, it's like, something, as you just can't hold him down.
Yeah.
Right? He's too good to sort of just split the backfield carries up in a way that at some point you maybe in your heart of hearts you want to be careful, or you want to sort of slow the roll a little bit for Darius Geis. But if he continues to run effectively, then maybe what ends up happening is the plans you had laid in March by bringing Adrian Peterson back so you can split carries if need be, or even have him be the go-to guy if Darius Geis is not there, that maybe those can be abandoned.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if I have him at running back 29. That's where his ADP is right now. New ranks go up today. Did not adjust him significantly. But I wonder if like one more week from now, and I understand what will change, they won't play, but like just following up with what they have to say, what Jay Gruden says, how he responds to all this stuff. I'm keeping my eyes on Darius Geis as a potential riser late in this preseason.
I think eventually, to your point, talent just wins out in
That's
the NFL.
what it is.
You know what I mean? And so if you've got a young guy that's running hard and part of it, I think for me with the Redskins, not to throw their quarterback situation under the bus, but they're probably going to have to be a pretty run-heavy team. They're not going to win a lot of games by just going out there and throwing the ball 50 times a game.
Yeah, that's a major concern, too. That's a good point.
So, if they're going to be on the ground, if they're going to have to be able to run the ball in order to win games, establish the run.com.
.com, yeah.
And be able to, keep the other offense off the field. A guy like Darius Geis, who especially, is a big physical back, can really help that team from that standpoint. So that work, game flow may dictate some of that.
So the reason why I said that's a major concern is like my hope is that they're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
My concern would be like if that's the only way they can be effective offensively because they can't throw it, and in turn that makes them predictable.
Yep.
And then they can't run the ball.
Right.
Then it's limiting.
Stacked boxes.
Stacked boxes, no Trent Williams, poor quarterback play, or maybe like, developing quarterback play once Dwayne Haskins becomes the starter.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a concern. So, yeah, but for now, Darius Geis, still a player that needs to be drafted. He's probably an RB3. I think I got a tweet last night. I think maybe all of us were tagged on it and said it was a group text thread where someone, after these 11 carries, said that they're drafting Darius Geis over Saquon Barkley. I'm invited to your league the next time you have an open spot.
Please.
The Patriots have like 11 running backs. It feels like that at least.
Yep.
Really, that's a good thing in some ways. But the fantasy side of it's difficult because you're like, I want to see who is the guy, if there is a guy. We always feel good about James White because runs a ton of routes, really talented pass catcher, dependable. And the Patriots don't just use him as a third down back because they throw it a lot on first down, throw it a lot on second down. But Sony Michel, we were a little bit nervous. He starts the training camp on PUP. Damian Harris was drafted, talented player out of Alabama. They've got Rex Burkhead still. All of these guys, they've got great backfield depth. Last night, he rushes 10 times for 36 yards. The Patriots starters played about 3 series last night. Tom Brady played 3 series, so the primary starters played about those 3 series.
Sure.
There was a long run that was called back last night by Sony Michel because of a penalty, but I thought last night, Daniel, we got further confirmation that there is a lead back in New England. Not like who is the leading back, like there is a lead back, and it's Sony Michel. And he came into the league with the knee concerns last year, and it's weird how sometimes when a player plays a lot as a rookie and has success, which Sony Michel did, that sometimes I dismiss how much a player can get better. Like as brilliant as Saquon Barkley was last year, there is at least an avenue that he is a more talented player this year, 1 year stronger, one year more experienced. Maybe I'm wondering if like that's what we're going to see from Sony Michel this year as he makes a leap. And if he's the guy in this Patriots offense, really, really juicy fantasy value there.
Absolutely. And I understand it's difficult when you look at James White, you look at the rookie they drafted in Damian Harris.
Yep.
And the ability to separate him from everyone else and say, you know what, even though we have these other backs here, he has a defined role, and that role, as you said, is the quote-unquote lead back in this offense. When you have an offense that is led by Tom Brady, regardless of whether or not Tom Brady is a top 10 quarterback, it is a valuable NFL offense, and the idea that Sony Michel could be incredibly useful to fantasy owners, I think my question is Sony Michel right now, is he an RB2? Is he a flex play? Is he, when you're drafting him, where is it that Sony Michel sort of falls? Because right now he feels like he's in between those two spots. You give him a little more value, he's an obvious RB2, but because of that crowded backfield, maybe he feels more like a flex play.
There are 2 reasons that I have him as a low-end RB2, or I've got him at running back 20. So you can make the case, elite flex play or low-end RB2.
Yep.
The thing that prevents him from moving further up, as of right now, are 2 things. Maybe 3. But let's say for sure 2. If the backfield splits are different in the regular season than what we've seen so far in the preseason, as in like more of Damian Harris, more of Rex Burkhead, or any of Rex Burkhead, that's one, right? Because just because it's run a certain way in the preseason doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, and the Patriots are always very predictable. But I still think he is the lead back. So I'm banking on number 1 being not much of a concern for me.
Okay.
But 2 and 3 are a little bit different. And 2 is last night the Patriots did have a rushing touchdown.
Yep.
You know who scored it? James Devlin, fullback extraordinaire. And I think Devlin scored 3 times last year. And as much as you say, like, yeah, it's just 3 touchdowns, it's 3 touchdowns.
He's a fullback 1 this year in my rankings.
Unquestioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. The guy's a beast. But like that's 3 touchdowns, right? Like 18 points can be the difference between Sony Michel being a low-end RB2 and maybe like a mid-tier RB2 over the course of the season.
Yep.
If James Devlin's going to get work, and you know it's fun and it's cool to see fullbacks score touchdowns, it's also effective for them. Like it's not like they're being hard-headed by using James Devlin. That being said, I don't know if I can predict that. Like it's just hard, and in the same way that like every once in a while, you know, Anthony Sherman might get a carry. Maybe not for the Chiefs, but you know, there are other fullbacks that might get some work.
There certainly, there absolutely are. There's always going to be those situations where a guy comes in and vultures a touchdown, and it just is what it is. And especially in a backfield like this, like you never know when it's going to happen.
And so that's 2, and I'm not super concerned. But 3 is where I'm most concerned. The passing game value. I want to say last year he had 9 catches.
Yeah.
So minimal passing game value. We had this conversation surrounding Derrick Henry a couple of days ago. Does that change? Now, with Henry at this point, you're saying to yourself, it's 3 years, really haven't seen it. Sony Michel, it's been 1 year.
Yeah.
So, like, it's hard to say for sure that he's not going to be a big part of the passing game because just 1 year in the pros, his final college season, he had 9 catches. Until we see that, that's probably the reason why we're not a little bit more confident in Sony Michel sort of breaking through, piercing his way into that, you know, top 15 ranks amongst running backs.
Because if he did add more from that passing game, he would be a top 15 running back. In that offense, with what it is that he does, depending on what kind of volume he gets, it's just tough with James White there. So I want to pivot really quickly, and I'm going to apologize to Kenny from our video team because you probably don't have this tiered up. But with the Patriots conversation, talk me down from Jacoby Myers. Just give me 30 seconds on this because dude has looked killer during the preseason.
Here's the only thing is this, like last night, the number, like he was playing more with Jared Stidham, and it seems like, you know, I think what the Patriots probably are saying to themselves is like, wow, we found a keeper, an undrafted free agent that will make the roster. Whether he's a big impact player, and talking you down is probably this, Daniel. Edelman off of NFI. Julius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas off of PUP. Josh Gordon could be activated from NFI by the start of the regular season.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. N'Keal Harry, first-round pick. 4. Philip Dorsett had all of Tom Brady's first 4 catches last night. Like, it just feels like if the Patriots do keep Jacoby Myers, he's their 6th wide receiver. That's assuming Philip Dorsett makes the roster as well. So just
6th wide receiver, but then you still have James White, who would potentially be ahead of him there.
You've got tight ends, you know, sort of a part of the passing game.
All right.
Really interesting with Jacoby Myers. But no, if nothing else, a good undrafted keeper by the Patriots. Dede Westbrook. Talked about him yesterday on the show. And I'm going to give Matthew credit. As much as it pains me to do this, no one tell him this. Just don't tell him. Just Matthew.
He's not going to listen, so you don't need to worry about it.
Does he even download? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
No one knows if Matthew even downloads. But as Matthew's on a flight somewhere today, don't tell him that I'm saying this. But he was more optimistic on Dede Westbrook than I was. And Dede Westbrook last night, the national broadcast amongst the national games was the Jaguars and Dolphins.
Yep.
Great game to have in the preseason.
Super great national broadcast.
But better in the preseason, right? Like, I'm glad I got this on Thursday, you know, August 22nd than like Thursday, October 8th or something. But Troy Aikman and Joe Buck on the call last night, and Dede Westbrook had, I think it was at one point 4 catches for like 39 yards and a touchdown. And Aikman and Buck were talking about how they had spoken to John DeFilippo. And Troy Aikman shared the story that Jaguars offensive coordinator John DeFilippo said, and remember, this is the guy that coached Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs last year, that Dede Westbrook's the best route runner he's ever been around.
Wow.
High praise there, and DeFilippo's coached for a long time in the NFL, so it's not just Thielen and Diggs he's worked with. It's a lot of guys. Last night, 4 catches on 7 targets, 29 yards for Dede Westbrook and a 10-yard touchdown. He was targeted on 7 of 10 throws from Nick Foles last night. So Matthew talked about like the propensity for Nick Foles to look towards the slot and how he's more effective, which my pushback was like, yeah, all quarterbacks look at the slot more and are more effective. Matthew, in this case, smart point. Dede Westbrook is their best slot receiver, so that's where it matters. not just their best slot receiver, he's their best receiver, period. I've got him at wide receiver 42, Daniel. It was an impressive performance, though, last night.
Absolutely. The thing that makes me be excited about this is less the stat line, and 4 for 29 and a touchdown. Great to be able to get in the end zone, but it's being targeted on 7 of 10 throws from Nick Foles.
Yeah.
To be able to see that the starting quarterback in that offense has established a rapport, has specifically been looking towards him, somebody that you think could see a heavy target share. There's a lot of wide receivers in this offense, and everyone's sort of been saying, all right, we think Dede Westbrook is the guy, and then who else filters in after him? And so to be able to see this amount of a target share in a preseason game, hopefully that continues on through the preseason. But I love Dede Westbrook. I mean, where he's going now, his ADP is wide receiver 33. You can get him in the back half of the 8th, 9th, 10th round, somewhere in there. And I think that's really good value for what could be the number one wide receiver on this team.
It's interesting. And I bet Keith have a good example off the top of his head, or at least could consider. But I don't remember the last slot wide receiver that really dominated. And when I mean last slot wide receiver, is in like a guy who only plays in the slot. Like Tyreek Hill plays in the slot, can play outside. He was amazing last year. But are there a lot of examples recently of like a slot wide receiver in a either low volume or like less than ideally effective offense that you can recall that have been like huge fantasy difference makers?
Other than Tavon Austin?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the concern, right? That would be the concern for Dede Westbrook here, is that although they're better.
Yeah, I'm joking, of course. But
but they're better as a passing offense this year, but are they great? Are they a great passing offense this year? Are they even an above average passing offense this year?
And if you're talking like, top 20 wide receiver, if that's what you're talking about, then yeah, it's even harder to find that. You can find guys that are startable week to week, certainly, especially depending on matchup. But yeah, for a full season, yeah, what kind of numbers are you talking,
One thing that I guess what I would say to recap it is that clearly saw he's a talented player. Second of all, clearly saw that he is Nick Foles' preferred target last night. And anecdotally, just, I know the broadcasts can be, sometimes it is what it is, like coverage is coverage, but I think these production meetings are important when these broadcasters get to speak with these coaches. It's sometimes coaches sort of let their guard down a little bit. And I thought that Buck and Aikman did a nice job last night of conveying the excitement that John DeFilippo has over Dede Westbrook.
Also clearly saw that there is no reason to draft any Dolphins players onto your fantasy team, correct?
So if I had to bypass a team this year in fantasy football, I think it's the Dolphins. Every year, there's probably 3 or 4 a year. If I had to state my case right now, I'm not drafting a player or probably rostering any of them, I think it's the Dolphins. Yeah. Last night, Kalen Ballage was the only healthy running back of the two. Kenyon Drake still out with that presumed foot issue. But the offensive line is a work in progress.
Yep.
The pass catchers, I don't care how good or bad they are, there's no time for whoever plays quarterback to be protected. There's just to throw. I don't know, Daniel. It's
going to be tough.
Who's our kicker? Jason Myers? Maybe Jason Myers. Even that, I don't know.
Yeah. If you're in a punter league, that guy, he's probably going to get a ton of action.
Yeah, he's probably really busy.
You know what I mean?
I take a punter league.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be fine on defense this year, the Dolphins, but I have major concerns on offense this season. One more injury note, and I know, listen, I don't want to make light of this because it's serious, but a Jordan Reed injury is something that people say, yeah, this is why we don't get excited about Jordan Reed. He's in the concussion protocol. He's never played more than 14 games in a regular season. But Daniel, before this potential concussion was sustained last night, once again, Jordan Reed looked good. He is one of the most tantalizing players in the NFL for this reason.
Yeah, but I'm at a spot now where we're so far into Jordan Reed's career that, again, a player like him, for as good as he can be, I just don't want to roster a guy that I don't know week in and week out if he's going to be healthy or if he's not, because it's not like these concussions just happen in the game. I mean, they come up in practice. They come up in, everything that you do throughout the week. It is something that can linger. And so, when I am drafting, for me, I want to be able to draft a tight end, and I'm trying to go after one of those top 2 tiers. I want to have one tight end on my roster, and when it comes time for that bye week, I will drop a guy, pick up my backup tight end, and I don't want to have to roster 2 tight ends. I want to have more upside in the back half of my bench than having a second tight end because I have a Jordan Reed.
So it's a fair point. I think I'm still in on Jordan Reed, especially because the price is so minimal, right? Where it's being drafted.
That's fair.
Tight end 14 in terms of ADP. However, I think there are a lot of people that were on board with that sentiment prior to this. Hey, tight end 14, you know something? I will roll the dice with Jordan Reed. But after last night, people are back in deja vu all over again. They'll just say, you know something, Field? I'm out. Like, as much as he could be great in a given week,
Sure.
there's maybe just as good or a better chance that he will not be there at all.
Yeah.
So while I am still in, I imagine many people will be out on Jordan Reed. No firm update, obviously, as of yet. I'd imagine we'll get something in the next couple of days.
If Jordan Reed is out, the Redskins will probably need another tight end. Field, do you know a place where they could go to maybe find one?
That's a really great question, Daniel, because back in the day, it would have been tough because hiring used to be hard.
Used to be.
Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy, and you only have to go to one place to get it done. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter sends you your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. They will call Matthew first.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
That
assume
makes sense.
Yeah.
He's athletic. Good hands.
Yeah. He has hands.
He has hands. That's a good point. He does have hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he probably would be, he'd be amenable. Like
Sure.
Is he affordable? I don't know. Well, how much money? He's rich. He's in Avengers Endgame, so he's already made his fortune.
Right.
He doesn't need to worry about that.
The veteran minimum, you know what I mean?
So I think there's a chance that Matthew may not be back on Monday or whatever day we said that he would be back later on this preseason. Okay. You want to do some I guess he would not be back this preseason or regular season.
No.
If he's with the Redskins forever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's preview the rest of the preseason then, because week 3 is still an important night in some cases, Daniel.
Yep.
And Kyler Murray, let's just sort of do this kind of rapid fire. So we have the Buffalo Bills to talk about a little bit later on in the show.
We got to save a ton of time for the Buffalo Bills.
Come on. I'm a Bills. I've sort of become like the voice of the Buffalo Bills fans.
I'm excited
right now.
about the team. Good for them. I want them to be good. Fantasy, I'm interested to see how it's going to work out. We'll get to them later.
We'll get to them. We'll go back and forth here. I'll begin. Kyler Murray playing against the Vikings tonight. In preseason week 1, he was very good. In preseason week 2, he was not so good.
Yep.
The Vikings are a good test. The Vikings, excellent defensive talent and personnel, certainly have the pieces in place there. Don't know how much we'll see out of the Vikings defense tonight, or Kyler Murray for that matter, this weekend, I should say. But he's going quarterback 15. I've got him at quarterback 9. I have no doubt about this, that while my ranking probably will not change substantially for Kyler Murray based off what we see this preseason, going forward, I think there's an excellent chance that one more game of struggling will just totally push his ADP. Probably not that much further down because he's at quarterback 15 right now, but wouldn't surprise me if he ends up, if he struggles again tonight, quarterback 18, quarterback somewhere in that range.
Yeah, which is funny to me because quarterback 18 is, and Keith can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like quarterback 18 is probably around the Lamar Jackson tier. And
I'd imagine Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Brady's going a little bit higher. Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, maybe Kirk Cousins, maybe Mitch Trubisky.
And even there, I think I would still rather have the upside. Now, the variance and range of outcomes for Kyler Murray and this entire Cardinals offense, we've been saying it all preseason, is the largest variance out of any team in the NFL.
No question.
Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, all of these things. So, I would love to see something from Kyler Murray, but you have to believe that they are going to give this kid every chance to succeed while he's out on the field this season.
Yeah, and we talked about Michael Crabtree being there yesterday. Ultimately, for Kyler Murray, I don't think it's really anything to do with how the pass catchers around him look. I think, as we all agree, it comes back to how much of a dynamic runner can he be this year right away. And as we were talking about with Josh Allen, sometimes your quarterback having a lot of non-design runs is a really good thing. Let's him sort of ad-lib his way to 100-plus rushing yards in a given week. But Kyler, I'm telling people, whatever happens tonight, I'm not freaking out about Kyler Murray. I still am in. I've got him at quarterback 9. And absence an injury to either him or a key player, I don't envision moving things around too much from there. 49ers, Daniel. You think Stefanski's nervous? going into this game against Kansas City?
I think I would be if I were Stephania. I mean, there's a question mark around, okay, so we saw what Jimmy Garoppolo did last week. Wasn't ideal. Had a rough week of practice, and that's being polite. Had a rough week in practice before that game. So when you go in and you have a 0.0 passer rating, I know I gave her a hard time at the live show, but you're
being fair and honest.
You put a lot of money into this guy to come in and be your franchise quarterback, to be the guy that is going to lead your team to the playoffs. And so I have to see something from Jimmy Garoppolo tonight. Like, he's got to do something for me to make me feel like there is a chance that he will be. I mean, he's not a starter at this point, but he's maybe a backup, a second in a QB2 league, maybe like a backup quarterback or a bye week fill-in.
This is a fantasy football podcast, but certainly fantasy intersects with quote unquote real football frequently.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about in some ways for Jimmy Garoppolo. If he wants to be the franchise quarterback for the 49ers, you have to eliminate performances like we saw this past Monday night. I'm not saying he's going to get benched before the season begins, but they had Nick Mullins start last year and play effectively. 5th in the NFL in yards per attempt. He had some nice moments. Really interesting for Jimmy G tomorrow, I believe it is, against Kansas City. And then also the running backs.
Yep.
Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida. I've stated my belief that maybe it's a closer battle than some people give it credit for.
Well, Kyle gave us this really great note. Tevin Coleman, second worst running back in yards per carry after first contact in 2018 with 1.35 yards. NFL average is almost 2 yards per carry after contact. So Matt Breida wasn't too much better. I mean, there's a lot of question marks around this team because everything starts with the quarterback position. How's that going to trickle down to the wide receivers? Is George Kittle going to be able to keep up that historic performance that he did last year? You've got 15 running backs in this backfield. There's just a lot of question marks all around. And so, I am really hopeful that we will see something in this game that is going to make me say, oh, you know what? That gives me a little bit more confidence than what I have right now.
Yeah, Coleman, Breida, interesting position battle there in San Francisco. For now, Jerick McKinnon off the radar. I just, might be a while before we see him. Some pain following that knee injury last year, the ACL tear that ended up costing him the season. He came back earlier this preseason. He's back out. I think he's going to be evaluated another handful of days or so. Backfield situations, not unique to San Francisco because we got a bunch of them. Let's begin in Tampa Bay. I know it's a low volume or maybe a low ceiling backfield situation. Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, who's trying to avoid milk carton treatment, right? We're where is this guy? Where has he gone? Played poorly, again, to put it kindly, last year.
Yep.
Any hope whatsoever for him, in your opinion?
He's in that category of I want him to be a sleeper for me.
Okay.
But I haven't seen anything to make me feel like he's even sleeper worthy right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Give me something. This is what it is. Give me something in the preseason. Let me hear your coaches say great things about everybody in the preseason because they just want to give everybody, no one you don't say a lot of negative stuff about your own team. So when I'm not hearing Bruce Arians talk positively about Ronald Jones, and it's not that he's saying, negative things, but I just want to hear more. Just give me something to give me hope, man.
There are times where coaches are very tactical in the media, and they tell you things that the players need to hear, right? He's doing great. He's kicking tail. He's going to be a major part of our offense this year or our defense this year. Whether I'm sure they believed it, but the Ravens put on a full court press surrounding Lamar Jackson this offseason. He's awesome. He's the man. Revolutionize football. We can revolutionize. Well, we will revolutionize offensive football, etc. They have clearly made it a priority to make Lamar Jackson feel good. For the Bucs, it doesn't feel like Ronald Jones has been forecasted as, hey, this guy's going to come out here and win this job and going to be a big part of our offense. Frankly, though, Daniel, not sure it matters either way.
Yeah.
Peyton Barber played a ton last year, had a huge carry share and got a lot of touches week to week. And I think he still was basically he was a low-end flex play because of his availability, not because of his production in a given week. So neither situation jazzes me that much. I still think a lot of what was flawed about Tampa Bay last year will be the same this year. Bad defense. They're going to have to throw it a ton.
Yep.
The Chargers, as we know, we talked about this a lot. Melvin Gordon, his holdout continues, and it sounds like there's a chance we won't see him for quite some time. Tomorrow night, I believe it is, Los Angeles Chargers versus Seattle. Austin Ekeler versus Justin Jackson. Daniel, I think I would like to see and it's probably Austin Ekeler, once again, be the dominant workhorse in this backfield.
Yep. I think if I was taking one of these right now, understanding we are still waiting more word and more clarity on the Gordon situation, I like Austin Ekeler. We saw him do it last year. We've seen him be efficient. I mean, Justin Jackson did it too, but there's something to me about it feels like the team trusts him. He's a good pass catcher. He's been able to go out there and has a good rapport with Phillip Rivers. If I'm taking one of these two backs, I think Justin Jackson probably has more upside as a volume guy if Melvin Gordon isn't there, but I like Austin Ekeler. I want to root for Austin Ekeler. That's part of it for me. Like, I just love being that kid.
It's interesting because I think that Austin Ekeler, has shown himself to be more explosive. It might be just a more explosive player, like in a given carry.
Yep.
The difference, I think, is that Justin Jackson, and this maybe is like too much of an old football cliche, kind of has more of a workhorse back type build to him. Austin Ekeler, not quite like Mighty Mouse, but like not a huge back. Part of the reason why he hasn't been a workhorse back for them in the past, other than, of course, Melvin Gordon being there. But still, we saw something of a work share split last year that I don't know that we're going to see like a clear cut. Hey, as we have seen in other situations where, like, when Kareem Hunt was waived last year by the Chiefs, although we thought it could have been a sort of a shared backfield job from there, like it was Damian Williams. It was his show. That's not always the case. And tonight, we might get a little bit more context. What I don't want to see tonight, sorry to be selfish, is when the starters play, this weekend I should say, when the starters play, I don't want to see Justin Jackson out there for like every single carry.
Me too.
Right? Because that would just be like, would be a pendulum just swinging back and forth from Austin Ekeler to Justin Jackson, Austin Ekeler to Justin Jackson. Same game, other side is Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. Not saying that Chris Carson and Rashad Penny are competing for a job right now.
It is Chris Carson's job.
It's Chris Carson's job, and it's not clear. But it sounds like there's just hasn't been a whole lot of buzz surrounding Rashad Penny. And let me just sort of articulate this properly. Usually I don't give up on a player at any position after one season. Running back is the one where I get most nervous, Daniel, because as we have seen, there's probably no position where players have had more immediate success from any round than running back. Last year, not just Saquon Barkley, but also a guy like Phillip Lindsay.
Yep.
Undrafted. And players in between them as well. Sony Michel was really good for the Patriots. Darius Geis, he was on track for the Redskins before he got hurt. But Rashad Penny couldn't find his role. And the Seahawks ran the crap out of the ball last year. And Rashad Penny, he had one sort of flash game. Other than that, not a whole lot. Do we just see something from Rashad Penny? Or is the fact that he's being drafted as running back like 40? Sort of like, it's not about what you see. It's just about the role and the potential.
Yeah, they're going to run the ball a ton. I think part of it for me is just Chris Carson. Chris Carson is a good running back, but he's not a special talent. And so the ability to be able to have, Rashad Penny, I feel, with where they drafted him, I'm sure the Seahawks wanted him to come in and just be the guy.
Yeah.
Hey, man, come in and take this role, and that is yours. And I'm sure they're going to continue to give him those carries. They're going to let him do that. But if he's not showing them on the field what it is that they're looking for, they know that they have a guy in Chris Carson that can be effective. He's a decently efficient runner. Had 53% of Seattle's carries in the 14 games that he played last year. So, he's getting a good workload, and Seattle's going to run the ball. I need to see something, like we've said. Same with Ronald Jones. I need to see something from these guys for me to feel comfortable. Otherwise, they're just a sleeper, and I don't know if they're going to make it to me where I would feel comfortable drafting them this season.
I was just saying how, like, when earlier with the Redskins, is that, like, when they re-signed Adrian Peterson, part of it might be like the uncertainty surrounding Darius Geis.
Yep.
When the Seahawks drafted Rashad Penny, that was coming off of a year when Chris Carson had been banged up, right? He had a broken leg at one point, a broken finger at one point. So maybe part of it was, hey, we're using a first-round pick on a running back because we like Chris Carson a lot. We're just not so sure if he's going to be able to hold up year over year.
Yep.
Last backfield here is Phillip Lindsay versus Royce Freeman. Lindsay being drafted 25th amongst running backs. Freeman's being drafted 34th. Tell you what, Daniel, it's a really interesting one because the Broncos really liked what they saw, obviously, last year from Phillip Lindsay, but they really liked what they saw from Royce Freeman before last season. I get the sense, you hear the way they talk about Royce Freeman, they seem to really like this player. Could this be more of a work split than we forecasted?
I think that's what I'm thinking. I mean, when you look at the kind of runner that Royce Freeman is, it is different than the kind of runner that Phillip Lindsay is.
Yep.
And so the ability, not to say that their quarterback position doesn't inspire confidence in me,
But it might not.
But it might not. You look at the idea that this could be a I don't want to say running back by committee, but a split where there are going to be packages and times where Royce Freeman is going to be the guy because it fits his skill set. And then there are going to be times where Phillip Lindsay is the guy because it fits his skill set. And then we'll see what happens halfway through the season when Theo Riddick comes back. Do they get Theo Riddick involved? Because he's another, not from a fantasy perspective this year, but just from an NFL perspective, a guy that, can be out there on third down and move the chains.
If you're playing from behind, and the defense looks really good in Denver, but the offense may not be very good to the point that they could be down 10 points and all of a sudden that might feel like 21 points for Denver. So
right.
This is a team that I think definitely has to figure out how to, it's going to sound weird, not lose games on offense. The Seattle model from last year.
Sure.
Right? Like, play really good defense and be opportunistic on offense. And if they're able to do that, it might make sense that Royce Freeman, a big, powerful back, is a bigger part of it. Another backfield to keep an eye on. Let's take a quick break, see if Jackson's a sounder for that, and then come right back and talk about the Bills.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy focus.
Pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
Very impressive.
I feel like the veteran that has had this undrafted rookie behind me, and now I'm getting a little bit worried. I might come back from injury a little bit early because I can't let him get more reps at the board.
What was the best? I'll think of it like the best rookie performance from a guy that we weren't necessarily expecting it in week one. Like Saquon, obviously awesome.
Sure.
Remember how Zeke struggled his first 2 weeks?
Yep.
Jackson is the anti-Zeke Elliott right
he's
now.
He's Anquan Bolden.
Yes, there we go.
He was a beast right out of the gate.
Man, that first game. Oof.
Jackson will take that.
And talking to Jackson back here, I mean, yeah, you should be concerned.
Okay, Keith. Let's calm down a little bit.
I was gonna say.
All right.
Let's
okay.
Let's
not cool, Keith.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're living up to your name quite precisely right there, Keith. Let's move ahead with the Buffalo Bills. Vegas forecast them with 6.5 wins. They've been over that number in 3 straight years prior to 2018. First player here, Daniel, is Josh Allen, being drafted right now as quarterback 24. I've got him right around there, Daniel. It's weird. It's interesting, right? Because quarterback 1 from weeks, 12 to 17? All right?
Yep.
And yet, we're not super confident in drafting him. Here is the case for Josh Allen, right? Rushes like crazy.
Yep.
The dude is he's a horse in the open field, right? Last year, he was tied for third in the NFL in rushing touchdowns weeks 12 to 17. Okay, so that 6 week sample size. Tied for third in the NFL in rushing touchdowns. He was 8th in the NFL in rushing yards, and he was 1st in air yards per attempt. So what he does basically is he's sort of like Mark Reynolds, the baseball player. Home run or strikeout, right? Go big or go home. Ran the football a ton, ran really well. Throws it deep, and he certainly has plenty of arm strength. The concern is 2 things. 1, he completed a league low 52.8% of his passes last year. Accuracy is a major question mark.
Definitely.
And then the Bills don't want him to run as much this year, Daniel, because he was running because he was like a chicken with his head cut off last year. So can the formula that worked last year, in your opinion, sustain this season?
No, the formula, I think I think that formula needs to change because he needs to become a more efficient and effective passer. Great, and I love being able to see him get points, especially in fantasy with his legs. That's going to be super valuable to what it is that he does. I mean, it's the same thing with Lamar Jackson, right? Yep. These kind of running backs, you draft them because they are not just passers, but because they can give you, those rushing touchdowns and those rushing yards. But he didn't throw for more than 245 yards in a single game last year. Not even breaking the 250-yard mark.
Right. Yep.
He was off target on a league high 23.7% of passes in 2018. That's almost 7% more than the league average. I mean, there are a lot of problems with him from that throwing efficiency standpoint that he has to clean up this year. Great that he's going to be able to have those legs to be able to fill in with some of those fantasy points he won't give you through the air. But if he does not become a more efficient passer, it's just not going to be enough to make him fantasy viable for me in 2019, even though I want to be so excited about him.
Right. So this is the weird sort of like the cognitive dissonance. Maybe I'm using that term wrong. But anyways.
It sounded really smart, whatever it was.
I was going to say, sounded smart. Here's where I'm at with Josh Allen is that while his fantasy prospects might not be as elite this year as they were down the stretch last year, I think he's going to be a much better player.
Yeah.
So, like, for the Bills standpoint and for Bills fans, you should be excited. For fantasy purposes, yeah, he's just a 2-quarterback league addition based off the information that we have right now.
Yep.
Better pass catchers this year, that much is for sure, Daniel. Cole Beasley, John Brown, both added this offseason in free agency to go along with Robert Foster, who was a big play waiting to happen last year, and then Zay Jones, who had a pretty productive season actually last year when you look closer at the numbers.
Yeah.
So I don't know that people are going to be drafting more than one Bills wide receiver. I don't want to just lump them all into one category. But so of these two veterans, all right, Cole Beasley and John Brown seem to be generating the most heat. Either one of them sort of move the needle for you? Because as of right now, ADP-wise, Beasley's being drafted 64th, John Brown 66th, and those are being drafted in just 11 and 16% of leagues respectively.
Sure. I think, and help me through this thought process. In theory, I want to like John Brown because of what Josh Allen can do with his arm.
Okay.
The ability to have, how his air yards per attempt, the ability to just sling it and throw it out there to a guy like John Brown who's just a speedster to be able to open up downfield like that.
Yep.
I like Cole Beasley more, but Josh Allen is going to have to show that he can be effective in that short-range passing game, I think. And we saw a little bit of that in the preseason, and I'm hoping that continues because if he can get some of those passes under his belt to be able to keep moving the chains, to be able to just pick up, 5, 6, 7 yards at a time with Cole Beasley, I think that would be really helpful to him as a quarterback. But John Brown, with what Josh Allen's arm talent is, I think just intrigues me more and gives me more hope for upside in 2019.
I think the breadcrumbs right now suggest that Cole Beasley has established the best connection with.
I agree with that.
With Josh Allen. The trick is this. Is if you think like it's chasing. So I like, as I mentioned a couple of days ago on the show, late round sleeper in deeper leagues because I could see Cole Beasley being a guy that you feel pretty comfortable getting you close to 10 points a week. If you're looking for a player that has a chance to be the guy in a world in which Josh Allen makes major strides as a passer and this becomes a far more efficient passing offense, to me it's John Brown.
Yeah.
For what you just mentioned. Excellent down the field, a guy who we have seen before, been there, done that, right? And not just down the field, but certainly that's where he makes his money. He has made a lot of his money. The 3 years, $27 million he got this offseason. Neither one of these players is a guy that I expect to be a fixture in people's lineups at the outset of the season, but they're both interesting, deeper league flyers.
I will say, I was just thinking John Brown, I feel like would be a perfect late round best ball pick or somebody in like the right DFS matchup where like his upside is just more than Cole Beasley. Because
I'm so intrigued by Josh Allen, just like as a player, I think he's just a fascinating quarterback. I feel that way about John Brown. I feel that way about Robert Foster, who, I don't know that we necessarily need to dig too deep here because there was he led them in receiving yards last year, Buffalo wide receivers in receiving yards.
Sure.
It was 436, right? So it's like not a huge, robust total. You're not like, wow, like I think Julio had like 1,000 more yards in that last season by himself. So there's a difference. That was with Josh Allen, by the way, center. But still, he had 541 yards for the season.
Yeah,
so
436 specifically with Josh Allen.
So but still, 541, not a massive game-changing number.
Yep.
But Robert Foster, also interesting. It feels like this much we know for sure. Those are the top 4 wide receivers in Buffalo. I just don't know that you're going to... It feels right now unlikely to me that more than 2 of them are weekly fantasy plays, and it might be that none of them are, right? I mean, just like there's a lot of work for Josh Allen to make, or to he has a lot of work left as a passer.
Yes. I will say that this is probably a receiving core that I'm not specifically avoiding, but I'm not also targeting any of these players in my drafts.
And based off where they're being drafted right now, everybody is following that same logic as you are, so you can get some... I think what we're sort of pointing towards is like if 1 or 2 of these guys emerges early on in the season, we're going to sort of state the obvious and go with the 2 players that they themselves, the Bills, targeted in free agency.
Correct.
John Brown, Cole Beasley, who signed for good money, each one of them. I think where people are probably most interested for the Bills is their backfield because LeSean McCoy, Frank Gore, and then Devin Singletary are all in the mix here. And LeSean McCoy, very well known in the fantasy community. Obviously, Matthew took him to task on his spoiling of the Avengers Endgame movie, which, not cool. But for fantasy football, Daniel, I think the question is this. Is LeSean McCoy still on the fantasy radar?
I think, to me, I think he has to be, doesn't he? I mean, I'm not saying that fantasy radar means he's going to be an RB1 or an RB2, but like in this, what this game flow could be for the Bills, like he could easily be a low-end flex play, even though he doesn't inspire confidence. And sometimes we get caught up in, and I'll say this myself, like you can get caught up in but he's, on the wrong side of 30, especially as a running back. I don't want to draft a guy like that. I'd rather draft someone with more upside. But sometimes, there's still value here. You can't just get caught in that group think of, I love young, talented, high upside guys. There's still veterans that hold a lot of value. And LeSean McCoy can be that guy that can be a low-end flex play, or if nothing else, just a bye-week fill-in for your roster to be able to keep around all season long.
So on paper, he is the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills. That's good. There's some harrowing signs, though, that Kyle provides. Last year, when he was active, so not just in total.
Yep.
When he was active last year, he handled 41% of the carry share.
Okay.
That's not a huge number. That's not dominant, okay? He averaged 0.96 yards per carry after first contact.
That's bad.
That's the worst rate by a running back in the decade that they have measured that stat at ESPN.com.
Yikes.
Beyond that, Frank Gore signed this offseason. Frank Gore, one of the most awesome players in the NFL, not a player that you sign to just have around and not play. He's not playing on special teams, and Frank Gore is a workhorse here. There are a lot of daunting sides here for LeSean McCoy. I just don't think right now in his ADP tiers around guys like Rashad Penny and Jordan Howard, I don't think there's any question those two players present more upside this season.
Sure.
I know we sort of poo-pooed Penny a minute ago, but just to go back to what we've talked about a few times with Matthew is that like if something happens to Chris Carson, at least he would be the unquestioned starter. And in Jordan Howard, I think there's a better chance that he would have 12 touchdowns this year than LeSean McCoy.
Yeah. I totally understand all of that, and I agree. This is where it's none of these people are going to be starters for me. So you're looking for guys, and this is where, I'm not sure how to be able to value, like when is Frank Gore just going to fall off a cliff? I mean, he's been playing for 35 years, and we've been waiting for it, and sooner or later that's going to happen. So I don't want to feel like, LeSean McCoy, part of the reason why I feel like he could be where he at is just because of his pass catching ability.
We have this great fear sometimes in fantasy football during the preseason that like if we don't discuss a player, we are weary of the possibility of that player breaking out and becoming a league winner.
Yep. LeSean McCoy's not going to be a league winner.
I don't have that fear for him.
No.
Or Frank Gore.
Nope.
I just don't.
Yep.
Now, I think the most interesting player in this backfield is Devin Singletary. 3rd-round pick out of Florida Atlantic, played for Lane Kiffin there, had a bunch of touchdowns. Felt like he was scoring all the time there. He's being drafted in just 16% of leagues, and that makes sense. But our friend Adam Schefter mentioned him during the Fantasy Marathon as his sleeper. And that's obviously a deep sleeper. But just the idea that he's really talented, 3rd-round pick, can run and catch, make people miss, that if there was a Bills back that I think has the big play upside to be really intriguing late in the season, to me it's Devin Singletary. Now, there is just as much of a chance, actually probably a far greater chance, that he barely sees the field to even register on the fantasy radar. But like I would just say, if people are always looking for sleepers, what Shefty says, I echo. So to me, Devin Singletary, an interesting guy to keep an eye on.
Totally. I mean, he's a guy to be able to, especially within our game, like I'm going to flag him and keep him as I'll look and see if I'm probably not going to draft him, but from a waiver wire standpoint, watch what he does week in and week out, see how his workload increases and keep that in the back of my mind. He's not somebody that you're drafting this year, but like you said, keeping an eye on as the season rolls along.
Yeah, you play in a super deep league, like we play in the 16-team War Room League.
Sure.
He probably could be drafted in that. I mean, almost everybody gets drafted, it feels like. Keep an eye on him. Actually, Adam Schefter wrote a column on ESPN Plus that overviews some of his best value picks, some of his favorite sleepers. Shefty loves fantasy football. He has so much information, more than anybody else, I would contend, in the sport. That's a great column to keep an eye on. If you play in deep leagues or if you're just looking to get ahead, check out that column, now available on ESPN Plus. And protected. Not by passwords only, but also ADT.
That's right. Fantasy Focus Football is sponsored by ADT Field. What does real protection mean for our listeners? It means you can get all the latest innovation and smart home security from ADT combined with 24/7 monitoring from the most trusted name in home security. You get a team of professionals designing and installing a secure smart home just for you. You get 18,000 employees safeguarding you with connection to first responders. You get the nation's #1 smart home security provider. You can get a secure smart home with everything from video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, smart locks and lights, all controlled from the ADT app or the dulcet sound of your voice.
Dulcet.
You get professionally monitored carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. You get a system custom designed to fit your home. You can get safety on the go in the car or when the kids are at school with the ADT Go app with an SOS button. Do yourself a favor. Support ADT because they support us by helping make fantasy-focused football possible. Thanks to ADT.
They are our friends. They should be your protectors as well. As always, we want to make sure that we get some questions in to conclude the show. Again, watch all the preseason games this week. But before we do that, Keith, fire away.
We got a few questions for you here. Nicholas wants to know, in a perfect world, who are you taking at the turn in a 12-team league?
Ooh, interesting question. Perfect world. I would say, and I've stated this a couple of times recently, that I want to make sure that I leave the first 2 rounds with 1 stud running back.
Yep.
That's just something that I feel strongly about, especially this year, because of how few quality running backs there are. So if you have one of the top 3 picks, you feel really good. Some of the players that I think will be available that are really intriguing at the turn would be the top-end wide receivers, so like the Mike Thomases and Odells of the world.
Yep.
I think running back-wise, it's going to be players that are like James Conner for me right now. Nick Chubb would be another guy that I love. Those would be some of the examples of guys that I'm taking, like some sort of elite. I'd either take 2 running backs or one of those top-end wide receivers that you can make a case for as, like Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You can make a wide receiver 1 case. He's going as wide receiver 6 right now. Someone like that, plus a top running back.
I think in a perfect world, I'm probably going to take Saquon and CMC at the turn.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But in a non-perfect world, I'm with Field here. I love the idea, specifically Nick Chubb with Duke Johnson vacating a lot of the pass catches in that offense. I think he's going to take another step forward. And then, like you said, if I can get Nick Chubb and Michael Thomas, you were off to a good lineup right there.
That's a great start. I actually don't think that being in the 12th spot is a bad slot this year.
Agreed.
Again, I think that I'd rather be at 12 than I would be at 5 this year. 5 feels like a really tricky situation.
Yeah.
5 and 6 are really tough for me. Keith?
Couldn't agree more. Joe Cook in the chat, he says that his league went from 10 teams to 8. He says, does that move the needle enough to move Patrick Mahomes up into the 3rd round? So I guess the question would be, should Patrick Mahomes be taken earlier or later, depending on if it's a shallower league?
It was interesting. So we had this conversation a little bit during the fantasy marathon draft. We just did 6 rounds, and it was everybody had to take a quarterback. So Schefter, maybe this is different circumstances, but the idea being like if you have to take a quarterback early, how early? I am not totally sold on Patrick Mahomes needing to go any earlier because you have even more margin for error with your quarterback later in an 8-team league that even if you whiff, I'm not counting on this, but even if you whiff with, for example, Kyler Murray, you could also whiff with Tom Brady and you could also still have a chance at somebody else, right? Like there's more salvageable options in an 8-team league. And the people that draft guys like Mahomes and probably Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan and players at the top of the draft board won't have as many concerns that they're not going to be drafting 2 quarterbacks.
So here's the thing. In a 16-team league, I want that quarterback earlier, right? I need to be able to have that guy. But you just named, in an 8-team league, you just named half of the starting quarterbacks in that league. Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, and Baker Mayfield, right? So from that standpoint, there's going to be so many good quarterbacks available. I don't think that I would reach for Patrick Mahomes because you're not just going to get a top 8 quarterback or a top 10 quarterback. You get a top 8 quarterback, and you're pretty certain about that. So I would still rather have high-end running backs from that standpoint than a Patrick Mahomes.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, for some context, if you look at who is 8 and 9 at quarterback on our ADPs, it's Andrew Luck and Carson Wentz. So even if you're concerned about Luck, Wentz would be the 8th quarterback taken in that case.
And if Andrew Luck doesn't get drafted in that league, think about the idea that Andrew Luck could be on the waiver wire, and as soon as he comes back healthy, look at. That is such a stud to be able to have as a quarterback on the waiver wire in week 4 of your league once he's healthy.
Yeah, pretty hard. I think that maybe I was clumsy at the outset of my answer. What I really wanted to say was be patient. Draft a quarterback later when you have only 8 teams.
2 more questions here for you.
Okay.
One from Binky.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't make that up.
What up, Binky?
I can't help but feel David Johnson is being overvalued by putting him in the top 5 conversation. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well,
So the way that he returns value is catches 80 passes, and the running game efficiency improves.
Yep.
Which there are no questions about work share. He's going to play a ton for the Cardinals as long as he's healthy.
Correct.
And he's going to catch a ton of passes.
Yes, he
because
is.
when they're going well, they'll throw it to him a lot. When they're playing from behind, they'll throw it to him a lot.
Yep. Kyler Murray specifically targeted the running back a lot in college in the offense that he ran. You look at what they need to do, and is it up outside the realm of possibility? He rushes for 1,000 yards and has those 80 catches. I mean, if
Don't think so.
If he does that, I mean, he's already just with those 80 catches and the yards he's going to get from that. I feel like that at least puts him in a top 7 conversation, and it would be really easy to see him as top 5 if we get to those specific milestones for him.
All right, Keith, bring us on home.
Everyone knows a Teddy Ballgame, and now so do we. Teddy Ballgame asks, which offenses should be faded entirely?
So Dolphins, as we discussed earlier.
Yep.
I think we kind of suggested almost the Bills.
Yep.
Anybody else come to mind for you as a fade?
As a total fade?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't
not
think
a
there's anyone
total
that.
fade. Redskins make you a little bit nervous, although we did give some positive Darius guys energy earlier.
You're like, even there are teams like in the past that like
Bengals make you a little bit nervous, but Joe Mixon and AJ
Joe
Green are
Mixon,
still there.
AJ, Tyler Boyd is still a good.
Yeah,
He'll
that's
be
true.
a good.
Yeah.
You know, the Jets have pieces this year. I'm excited to see them.
The total fade's probably just Miami, and the Bills are sort of a close second there for me in terms of total fade candidates. We've got a lot of games this weekend. There are still 10 more to be played. And again, we think in a lot of cases, a lot of starters will play a lot of snaps. That's good news there. We'll be back on Monday to break down exactly what all of the stuff that we see over the weekend means. In the meantime, it's a big draft week and draft weekend. Go to ESPN.com, find the draft kit, sleepers, busts, breakouts. I've got my 9 rules piece on there. We've got breakout candidates in their second year. We've got Matt Bone with all the film breakdown. We've got draft kits. We've got everything you need. Tristan Cockcroft has all kinds of content. Mike Clay, Daniel Dopp, Matthew Berry. Everybody, you name it. Check it out. In the meantime, we're back on Monday right here. Peace out.
You're in the 06010. Never gonna hustle in case you didn't know. Matthew Berry, TMR.
You guys go ahead, give me grief for being on SportsCenter for 45 seconds.
I think you could do better than me because I don't think you could.
Jailbait, Field Yates.
You're terrible at hashtag improv. At Field Yates. At Field Yates.
Stefania Bell.
Oh, don't let Barry convert you.
Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dopp.
Make it happen.
Mediocre fantasy advice.
You're older than people realize.
That never stops.
Loyal 06010 listener.
You want him to hit stop?